of the Lord. Sure, many of you are familiar with the old comedy movie Bruce Almighty. And if you haven't seen it, I highly encourage you to see it, if for no other reason than Morgan Freeman plays God. And I don't think there's ever been a better casting decision in the history of cinema. But if you haven't seen it, or if it's been a little while, here's a little refresher on kind of what happens. Bruce is a reporter, a TV reporter in Buffalo, New York, and he's kind of finding himself a little bit down on his luck. Work isn't going the way that he wants, his relationships aren't going the way that he wants, and so he claims that he could do a better job as God. So he gets a page one day on a mysterious pager, and he goes and meets God, Morgan Freeman, who gives him his powers and abilities for 1 week. So he's giving Bruce the opportunity to do exactly what he wanted, prove that he could be a better God than God. And so Bruce does what I think most of us would do in that particular scenario. He begins to take care of himself. He rights a few wrongs in his life, as he says, puts some relationships back together, creates a way for him to get that promotion at work that he's been longing for. But as he's taking care of himself and not the other people, his mind begins to be flooded with voices. The voices of people at prayer. Because to go along with the powers and the abilities of God, he was also given the responsibilities of God. And so he becomes so overwhelmed by all of these voices of prayers from all around the world, that he goes and complains to God. He goes, I can't do this. I'm so overwhelmed. I think I can help the world, but I just can't figure it out. And God says to him, that wasn't the world. That was just Buffalo between 57th and Commonwealth. There's a strange desire to want to be God. And it's something that, if we're honest with ourselves, we all struggle with. We all have a piece of ourselves that wants to be God, that wants to have complete control over absolutely everything in the world and in our lives. In fact, isn't that what the original sin really was? How does the enemy tempt Adam and Eve? If you eat the fruit of this tree, you will be like God. So it's a struggle that we all play with from time to time. You see, we have these desires in our hearts. We want to be happy. We want to be joyful. We want to be fulfilled. We want to have peace. And those desires are good, and they're right, and they're gifts from God. But so often we try to fulfill them ourselves. We think we know exactly what will make us happy or joyful or fulfilled or give us peace. And so we try to take it. We try to grasp at it. And more often than not, we see where that leads us. We are often not as smart as we think we are. And the things we think will fulfill those desires, very often do not. Perhaps we would have a lot more success if we were content to allow God to be God. When the priests and the Levites and the Pharisees come to John the Baptist and they begin to question him about who he is, it's almost like he can't answer fast enough. I'm not the Christ. I need you to know that. I need you to know, whoever you think I am not the Christ. Because John knows that as long as they think that he is the Christ, they'll miss the real one. The real one, whom he says to them is already among them, but they can't recognize him because they're so busy trying to find him, they're so busy trying to control what they think he is and have their own expectations of how God is supposed to be present to them, of how the Messiah is supposed to come, that they miss the quietness and the gentleness and the humility with which he actually reveals himself. We do that too. Whether it's ourselves or money or success or whatever it is, we make something else God. But whatever it is that we make God prevents us from encountering the real one, prevents us from recognizing him when he reveals himself to us. Because God is not supposed to just be this abstract idea, this thing that we believe in that's distant, that kind of pulls the strings. No, he is Emmanuel. He is God with us. He wants a deep, personal relationship with us. And as much as relationship requires us to be present to God, even more it requires us to allow God to be present to us. It's not this passive surrendering of I don't care about anything in this world. It's an inviting of God, an inviting of another into each and every aspect of my life, my joys and my sorrows, my struggles and my successes, allowing God to be there. And you know, the funny thing is, there's actually a really incredible freedom in allowing God to be God. Because think of all the things that God says he wants to do. Like we hear in the prophet Isaiah in the first reading today. He wants to bring glad tidings to the poor. He wants to heal the brokenhearted. He wants to bring liberty to captives. Think of all of the things that Jesus did when he walked this earth, the miracles of healing and resurrection, the teachings that he gave that are meant to provide a path to everlasting happiness and joy. All of these things we can open ourselves up to if we are open to the presence that is there behind them. There is perhaps no greater school for this than the Eucharist, than this beautiful, simple sacrament that teaches us to open our hearts to what our eyes can't see, to open our hearts to be prepared to encounter God, to be found by him in places that are completely unexpected. And, more importantly, it absolves us of the burden of being God. Life becomes no longer a puzzle that has to be figured out, or a series of obstacles that has to be constantly overcome. Life becomes a gift to be received. And we are given the freedom to just quite simply be ourselves, to be these beloved sons and daughters of the Father, to receive the great gift of his unbelievably, stupidly generous mercy and love. And we're given the gift of being able to respond to it, to play whatever role he has carved out for us in this great symphony of human history. At the end of Bruce Almighty, Bruce goes back to his life, but he goes back with a new sense of being present to others, with a new sense of learning to appreciate the gifts in his life. The gift of his simple job, which he learns to love anew. The gift of his relationships that were already right in front of him if he was only willing to open his eyes and appreciate them. But more importantly, he finds joy in a very unique experience that's open to every single one of us. To find the joy in not being God.